Hello, everyone, and you're very welcome to XFounders channel. XFounders is a bootcamp for ambitious Web3 founders where they meet, learn, and share. And today, I'm excited to be joined by Arjun Mahadevan, who is CEO of Doola, a business in a box for LLCs. Arjun, thank you very much for joining. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me, and really excited to chat about some of the topics we have scheduled today, but doing incredibly well and excited to dive in.
Amazing. So Arjun, just a few words about yourself, please.
Sure. Long story short, the story of Doola is obviously very closely intertwined to myself, but my family is originally from India. They then moved to England to start practicing medicine, and they went through this thing called a residency, which is a grueling process. My brothers and I were born in England, and then we immigrated to the US when I was 6, where I then grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, and I then ended up going to the University of Pennsylvania, where I studied mathematics in the college and statistics in the Wharton Business School. And it was there when I realized I really wanted to work in tech. So my first flight to San Francisco was for an interview at a company called Dropbox. And my second flight there was to start full-time. And it was an incredible experience. However, in San Francisco, when you walk past these huge companies and see people starting companies every day, you get the itch yourself. And I got the itch to start something. A few things failed at first, and then ended up pivoting into a business that we now call Doola, which helps people start businesses. And the cool thing here is that it helps people start businesses, whether you're an Amazon seller selling an e-commerce business, whether you're a SaaS, software as a service business, raising venture capital, or you're a Web3 company. And I think it's fun to think about what could come next in the future, especially with the use cases of generative AI. But I think it's also fun to think about what isn't going to change. And what isn't going to change is entrepreneurship and people looking to start companies. And it's really awesome to help people take that dream idea and turn it into their dream business.
Right. But I mean, how did you come up with this idea? Because like problem solution fit is something absolutely crucial for each and every startup. So I was just wondering if you could share, well, your path in this regard.
When I was going through the process of setting up a company for the first time, ended up paying over $30,000 to lawyers. And that might sound absurd, but that's what I thought was the cost of doing business. Thought that you just pay lawyers and that's what needs to happen. And the second time through setting up a new business, actually thought, crap, we're going to have to go through this again. But naively, and I think being naive can be very helpful, then thought, what if you could automate the formation and then not just form a company and throw founders to the wolves, but help hold their hand and guide them through running and growing their business too. Specifically focused on non-US residents, because at the time, not many businesses would serve you if you lived outside the US or if you didn't have a US social security number. And today we obviously serve companies who are living in the US or customers based in the US and outside the US. But at the time, there was a clear pain point. People weren't serving these non-US residents. And we thought, okay, let's offer them a fast, high-touch, high-tech solution. And it's working today. We have thousands of customers in over 175 countries. So it's been really exciting to sit on the front lines and watch these founders start their dream business.
Right. So correct me if I'm wrong, Doola is around 2 years old, right?
Correct.
So I'm just wondering, when did you find your product market fit? When did it happen? How did you feel it? How did you realize it?
I think the first sign was when one day our payment flow broke and we started getting emails from folks in all caps saying, hey, I can't pay. I need to pay to start my company. And product market fit can be very tricky. And I think there's different signs for it. There's obviously revenue metrics like hitting $1 million in ARR or strong user love. But I think the most visceral sign or feeling I've seen is imagining, is someone grabbing you by the shirt collar saying, I need this thing right now. And I think we saw that in terms of people saying, I need to start this business right now. I can't pay. Or, hey, I paid. When am I getting my company? I need my EIN and I need my bank account. I think in the journey, it was probably, I don't remember the exact date, but we saw those signs very early from the beginning. And then those are the early indicators. The more lagging indicators are the revenue that comes in, passing $1 million in ARR, whatever it might be. But I think it's a combination of those factors. But I think qualitatively, we know people need businesses. It's a way to separate personal from business, have liability protection. But most importantly, it's a way to set up a US business bank account so you can get paid and actually start your business, because it isn't quite a business yet until you actually have paying customers, and every person out there is looking to get paying customers.
No, yeah, I mean, it sounds very logical. So once you feel it's there, you just need to push it even more, scale it further. So, I mean, sounds like you're quite successful on this path. Okay, and then one more thing. So when you open your own LinkedIn account, what you see is CEO of Doola, and then on a mission to help 1 billion people open their dream business, right? So my question is, how important is the concept of mission here? Because like some startups, they're even wondering whether to put their mission on a pitch deck, for example. I mean, everybody knows it's kind of a crucial thing, but I mean, in your journey, how important is it? How much attention do you pay to the mission of your company?
It's very easy to lose sight of the purpose or why you're here. And this can happen for any business. There's definitely days when I think all we're doing is forming companies and filling out forms and helping people, I guess, set up a bank account. But when you zoom out or step back, you then realize all of those things are a means to an end to actually taking this dream idea and turning it into a dream business. The business or the LLC is a means to an end to the tax number, which is a means to an end to the bank account, which is a means to an end to getting paid. And when you're getting paid, you actually have paying customers, which is a business. And in that sense, the mission is important because it allows us, myself, the team, to zoom out and remember why we're here. And I also think the mission can be helpful to really focus on the broader impact you can have. And I think our business is, even if 1 billion people don't form companies with us, the content we put out, the education we put out, or the knowledge we put out can help inspire someone, whether it's now or in 10 years, to actually start their business. And I think that is very empowering, thinking, okay, we can do something now that's going to change the lives of not only these founders, but their customers and their families. And if you think of that web, it gets really, it gets mind-numbing in terms of how large that web can get. But it's not just one customer you're helping. It's their friends, their families, their customers. And you have this massive tree or this massive web or network of connections and impact you can have, which can get to 1 billion pretty quickly. So 1 billion might sound large and outrageous, but I actually think it's quite achievable.
Right. I mean, so, okay, this is you, the CEO of the company, right? But how do you exactly make sure that all your team members are also aligned with this mission? I mean, do you undertake any specific steps in this direction?
I think like all forms of marketing or sales, it's repetition is key. And that's repetition in terms of our messaging to customers and letting them know what our mission is, whether it's in team meetings, repeating, hey, why are we here? And in our weekly team meetings, we have a why are we here slide pretty much every week that explains our mission. And I think like these things, it's easy to say them, but you have to embody them and act them. And we have to see that impact on customers too. So whether it's our slogan or Doola's value prop or the mission, and whether it's to internal team members or external team members or investors, whoever it might be, I think the repetition is key. And that can be tricky because for the person writing or saying it, it feels very repetitive. I just said this last week, but you have to remember that everyone else out there has a million things on their mind as well. And actually, repetition is just a way to stay top of mind too.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I completely agree because, for example, your product roadmap or your strategy is something you can change from time to time, but mission is something more fundamental, and you need to kind of regularly repeat it to yourself and to people who surround you to just, be in line with it the entire time. All right. So, Arjun, the next point I wanted to discuss is the value of accelerators. So this is something we are indeed doing at XFounders, right? So we are sharing our knowledge and the knowledge of our experts, and we do our best to give early stage startups an opportunity to raise funds and to raise them wisely. And well, I happen to know that you are a Y Combinator alumni, right? So what was the role of YC in your success? So how much of it can you attribute to the acceleration program?
It's very hard to exactly say this person or this company or this accelerator made the difference. But I also do think that in any company, it's kind of binary whether or not you get to the next stage. And the stage could be funding milestones, customer milestones, revenue milestones, growth milestones, but you either get there or you don't. And my philosophy of thought is take all the help you can get, because you get there or you don't. And if you don't get there and you run out of money or run out of motivation, which often happens first, then the company's dead. And in this case, I think what Y Combinator and other accelerators can do is help founders, especially first-time founders, avoid the mistakes which have been made before. Or you can think of it as look around corners, which you don't know exist, but they've seen many founders go through before. And I think that's the biggest thing, is there's lots of non-obvious advice. And that can be the difference between not making a catastrophic mistake, but saving critical time to focus it on experiments. Because the truth is, 7 out of 10 things you work on at a startup won't work. And if that's the case, how can you make those 10 bets in the course of a month versus a year? And speed being the most important thing, so you take more shots on goal. So any accelerator, whether it's XFounders or Y Combinator or Techstars, whatever it might be, if you can create that environment for education to provide founders with advice on things which other founders have done, which worked or didn't work, you sort of get that hive mind of advice. The camaraderie, I think founders might be competitive, and that's good competition to say, hey, I'm going to do what that company's doing. I'm going to learn from that company. So camaraderie is critical. And then having the cohort with, weekly goals, weekly trainings, etc. I think if you put those things together, really good things can happen. And that model has worked for many different accelerators.
Right. So basically your advice is to apply to as many accelerators as possible, and then, well, probably to score them, right, with your team members to understand what value each of them could potentially give, whether it's knowledge, networking, or fundraising opportunities, but just, yeah, go for it, right?
I agree. I think applying to an accelerator to me is an example of asymmetric upside, where you put in a little bit of work applying for the accelerator. And the truth is, a lot of these applications will be similar. What's the team? What's the business plan? How do you get to 100 million in revenue? Who are your competitors, or what's the competition? But by putting in that small amount of work and applying, the upside is tremendous. You can get accepted to the accelerator. You might get accepted to multiple accelerators. Maybe the accelerator funds you or introduces you to your first business partners or your first actual customers. And I think that's asymmetric upside. Why not take that shot for lots of upside? The worst thing is that you took the time to think thoughtfully about your business and create a business plan, which you're going to need for your own business. The best case is you have 6 accelerators that all want to work with you, and you can choose and be hyper selective on which one. So I say take your shot there, and there's not much downside at all other than the time, and there's not that much of a time invested to applying to these accelerators.
No, yeah, I completely agree. Let's hope our founders will take your advice and do exactly as you described. All right, Arjun, I suggest we now jump on the core business of Doola, because that could be potentially very useful to our founders. I mean, everyone needs a legal entity, right? Whether you're a Web2 or a Web3 business. So my question is, what types of legal entities you offer at Doola? And I mean, how to make this decision, how to understand which type of legal entity I, as a founder, need?
I think to answer this question, I'll walk through the typical chain that a founder goes through. The first thing is, do you need to start a business to actually start a business? The answer is no. You can start a business and start talking to customers. You can make a business plan. You can make a landing page without forming any company. And that bars come down today with low code or no code tools. So that's the first thing, is you don't actually have to form a company to start working on a business. However, once you start a business in the US, the default classification you get is a sole proprietorship. That's an individual working on a business. That's the default classification. However, the downside of being a sole proprietor or a sole proprietorship is that you do not have liability protection through a company. And also, you're not able to then get a tax ID number to then open up a US business bank account. And the LLC, for example, is required to get that EIN, which is required to get the business bank account, which can be critical so that you have the legitimacy of being a business. You have liability protection to avoid a lawsuit. No one thinks of a lawsuit, but in that asymmetric downside scenario, your personal assets will actually be at risk, which no one wants. The LLC provides separation between personal and business. And having a business bank account and company is immense credibility or legitimacy. Rather than being an individual or a freelancer, you're now a business. And that can move mountains and have incredible impact in terms of closing customers and growing your business. So if you decide, okay, being a sole proprietorship isn't the best idea. I want liability protection. I want to establish myself as a business, or I need to accept a check or funds from customers.
Okay.
Typically, people then say, okay, should I form an LLC or a C Corp? The way I explain this is if you're raising capital from investors or institutional investors, a Delaware C Corp is typically going to be required. And that's because it allows you to give equity, give shares. It has a dual class or dual tax structure. So the corporation's taxed and the individual's taxed, but the structure is required by investors. However, the vast majority of people actually aren't raising venture capital. It can be a side hustle, an e-commerce business, maybe you're consulting. And for those folks, you should form an LLC. That's the most popular choice, and it gives you liability protection, limited upkeep. They're much easier to maintain. There's no board meetings. There's no double taxation. There's actually just individual taxation. It's a pass-through entity. And you also get tax flexibility too. So you could elect to be taxed as an S Corp or a C Corporation, or just be taxed as a pass-through entity and pay taxes in the country that you live in. And for most people, the LLC is the best choice. Within the LLC, though, about a year ago or a year and a half ago, Wyoming launched this new type of entity called the DAO LLC, or a decentralized autonomous organization. They were one of the first states to actually recognize DAOs and offer them the same sort of liability protections and benefits typically reserved for LLCs. And this was a new offering. I guess people are still figuring out to this day, because it is relatively new, the best types of use cases. But the cool thing about DAO LLC is that it actually allowed you to set the ownership agreement or ownership structure or the members through this on-chain entity. Or on-chain, you can actually define who the owners are, what the membership interest is, versus it having being a set list of members. So that's been a pretty cool thing to see. I think Wyoming is one of the earliest states to do it. Other states are potentially looking to follow. But overall at Doola, those are the three main entity types we help with: C Corps, LLCs, and then within LLCs, DAO LLCs too.
I see. Yeah. So do I understand correctly that Doola is one of the few companies in the market that provide this particular service of opening a DAO LLC as a new form of legal entity?
Correct. So not many companies do offer that. And I think the key thing for us was not just offering formation for DAO LLCs or LLCs, but helping you actually manage your taxes. So as of now, DAO LLCs are recognized as partnerships, meaning they actually have to file what's called a Form 1065 filing with the IRS, which requires this other form called a K-1. A lot of people have no clue what these numbers and forms are. And our goal was, okay, if folks are going to have to do this, let's not just provide a solution to form the DAO LLC, but make sure we can help with the ongoing compliance too. Let's make sure we can find banking partners who can actually open up a bank account if folks need a fiat bank account too. And we wanted to similarly provide this business in a box solution for the DAOs, the same way we do it for your typical LLC in Delaware or Wyoming.
I see. And okay, but at Doola, how large is the demand for DAO LLCs?
At first, when DAOs first launched, we definitely saw more demand. What I will say, though, is we've seen some exciting organic growth in terms of our DAO offering. If you actually go to Google and you search in DAO LLC, Doola is the first, if not the second, organic search result on Google. Without any paid spend, just organically, our ultimate guide to DAOs pops up. And last we ran the numbers, over 30% of all DAO LLCs ever created had been formed with Doola too. So I do think that similarly to how we're seeing a rise in LLCs due to the growth of e-commerce platforms like Shopify or Amazon, if there are platforms, tools, accelerators, or communities helping these Web3 companies or DAOs grow, some of them, but not all of them, will want a DAO LLC or an LLC. And then we can help those businesses grow and sort of piggyback on the tails of that growth too. So it'll be exciting to see what happens in the space. But given the short amount of time DAO LLCs have existed, we're really excited to see so many founders coming to Doola to form them too.
Okay, but do you also provide legal support with all these issues?
Doola can provide tax support in-house. For legal support, what we do is we try to find a network of, well, CPAs who can help with certain things we can't, but also lawyers who can help answer specific questions. So that might be a crypto-specific lawyer. Maybe you need help with a trademark and with like a legal consultant. Maybe you need a custom contract or agreement between founders or a certain business that you're working with. So our goal is, look, even if we can't provide the service in-house, how can we find a partner, tax or legal, or any type of partner actually, to help answer that question for our customers?
Okay, this is amazing. And like basically the idea is fantastic now to realize that the regulator is also on track with all these changes in the space. And I mean, we can see obviously the growth of DAOs in the market. And for quite a long time, there was basically no, I mean, legal form for them to exist, right? But I mean, to exist as a business, they need a corporate structure. And so DAO LLC seems something that is more or less, you know, suitable for them to actually to act in the market as a normal corporate structure. So I mean, very excited to see what's going to happen next. And so what's your opinion on it? Where do you think the future of regulation is heading? This is obviously a very positive step, right? In terms of creating this new form of legal entity. So shall we expect more US states and then countries as well to adopt the same regulatory framework?
It's a very good question. And the candid answer is I'm not entirely sure, but I do think it's presented or posed some interesting questions. The first is not even a question, but the process of forming a business is very archaic and outdated. It's why our business exists, to actually streamline that for people. But I think DAOs bring up this interesting idea of what if entity creation and management was fully not automatic. I think people see decentralized autonomous organization and think automatic. There's still people involved. But what if you could just make that process really written in code in terms of the voting rights for folks, the ownership interest, and how to actually create the company? I think that's a novel or interesting concept because we help people go, we like to say, before you can go 0 to 1 and find product market fit, you have to go 0 to 0.1 and get your business started. And DAOs might help you go 0 to 0.1 faster than anyone else out there because it's a click of a button and it's code running. So I think that's an interesting thing, which is okay. Speed is critical when starting a business, and the ability for you to pull people together and pull capital together faster than ever, which a DAO could present, is very, very compelling. However, the other interesting angle here is while a lot of DAOs or maybe Web3 companies want to remain completely on chain, at some point you're going to have to interact with what I call the real world. And that means it could be tax filings. That could be, hey, someone might not have a Gnosis safe or a MetaMask wallet and might not be able to pay you in Ethereum. They want to pay in dollars or bank wire. So you're going to need a US business bank account. And to get that, you'll need an EIN and an actual US entity. And I do think that rather than thinking it as, oh, there's Web2 and there's your typical LLC and then Web3 DAO LLCs that are completely on chain, I do think a bridge is going to have to exist. And I think companies like Doola can be that bridge, helping those companies sit on both sides or stay compliant. And if they do need certain things in the Web2 world, help access them. So I don't know exactly where things are going to go, but if I had to give my projection, I do think that there will be a bridge. And I think rather than Web2 or Web3, maybe like Web 2.5 is a good place to think of where Doola sits, where we help those companies connect what it's like to live completely on chain. But when you need to interact with the real world, if you will, we can help you stay compliant, set up a bank account, and then form that actual US LLC as well.
No, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like we do need these kind of bridges. Okay, so just wrapping up for a Web3 business who's just kicking off, we can consider basically the two options. So either a C Corp, because I mean, basically the major part of them are planning to fundraise, right? So it could be an LLC or a C Corp, right? But with a DAO LLC that they could also integrate governance on chain into their operations, right? And to basically build this bridge with the Web2 world. But to know more details and to understand like more correctly which form of legal entity I may probably need for my business, I can just ask Doola's help with that, right?
Right. So I think it's a really good overview of what's possible. Again, you can form a C Corp, you could form an LLC, or form a DAO LLC specifically, which allows you to effectively on-chain determine voting rights and the ownership interest. However, the ultimate thing, and this is the most important question, is the answer is going to be it depends. And that's why it's very tough to say, hey, if this, do that, if not, do this. And I think that's why we want to not only provide this high-tech experience, which is self-serve, but high-touch, meaning, yes, if you're a founder, if you're in an accelerator like XFounders, then hopefully we can set up a webinar and educate folks all together because they're going through a similar journey. But other founders, we can set up free consultations. We have live chat support online. And it's very scary, this process of getting your business started. So we want to make sure folks have peace of mind there. But yes, overall, what I would say is that if you're raising capital, ultimately, you'll want to make sure that if your investor has a specific requirement, unfortunately, you're typically going to have to go with that requirement if they're investing and it has to be through that structure. If that's not the case and there's flexibility, then yes, it typically depends on what's best for the unique structure of the business. And in that case, if there is any uncertainty or fear or doubts, Doola is happy to help answer those questions, Dave.
Okay, and so I mean, we just need to admit that the United States is still one of the most popular jurisdictions to open and run your legal entity, right? So we understand that there are more alternatives now across the world, but I mean, still, this is the reality.
Of course, and I think it comes from the fact that everyone wants a global business. The US can serve as a hub for that global business, and the US consumer market is still one of the most lucrative consumer segments in the entire world. Yes, it doesn't mean you can't build a lucrative business outside the US, but I think at some point, every business does want to expand to the US or have a presence here, whether it's customers or hiring or a physical presence. And given that, you're right, we should face reality, or at least as we like to think, talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. And if we can make it click button easy for anyone to expand their business to the US or come to the US, then only good things can happen, and we can help increase entrepreneurship globally too.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are some issues in the Web3 space with the US, but yeah, let's
correct.
Yeah. Arjun, just one last question, which we ask every single expert or contributor who comes to us. Could you please share a piece of advice with our founders who are just kicking off? They're just at the very early stage of their journey.
There's a few things. I couldn't pick one, so I'll say all
Go
three
ahead.
of them. The first one is systems are more important than goals. Every single Olympian, for example, has the same goal. They want to win the gold medal. But why doesn't every single person win gold? Well, it comes down to how they trained. Were they more consistent? Did they do more reps? Did they have a better training plan? And obviously there's luck involved too. But I do think, and I guess this is the second one, I do think that the harder you work, the luckier you get. And really what luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And the third thing is, in order to get luckier, I do think you have to shoot your shot or put yourself out there. And that comes back to this idea of asymmetric upside, where if you do these things, which are obviously going to be scary, but they're small investments, they can lead to outsized results, whether that's sending a cold email to someone, cold calling someone, putting a tweet out there, launching a business, approaching someone you're scared to approach and talking to them. All of those things, yeah, they can be embarrassing, or maybe the person doesn't respond or talk back to you. But in the chance that they do, it could open up some path which you never dreamed existed. So I would say shoot your shot. It's always going to be scary. There's fear of what others will think. But the biggest fear is actually 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now, thinking, what if I didn't do this? So just shoot your shot. The worst thing that happens is you try. The best thing is that your wildest dreams come true. And I think, life's too short to not shoot your shot and take that shot there.
Yeah, sounds super valuable. Arjun, thank you very much for this interview. Wishing you a nice day, and we keep in touch.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This was a ton of fun.